Give away the good stuff right up front. Don't wait. If you want to grab your audience's attention right away and pull them directly into the story, and what writer doesn't, then you need to hook them right away with some of your best character, plot, and song moments. You need a prologue. You've got killer material in your show, and I bet you do. Then why wait a couple of hours to deliver that to your audience? Can you instead give them a sneak peek to hook their eyes and ears up front? I bet you can. Now, I'm not saying that every show wants or needs a prologue. There are tons of ways to do the opening sequence of a show. But boy are these handy, and they are the direct descendant of another grand old musical theater tradition, the overture. Overtures served two main purposes back in the day. Number one, let the audience know that the show is starting and they should probably make their way to their seats. And number two, to prime the ears of the audience to the musical world and the catchy songs that they're about to watch. Why would we want to do that, you ask? Because just like in marketing, we are far more likely to buy into something if we've heard or seen it before. First impression can be a lot of information to take in, but if we've been lightly introduced to a melody or a character or a piece of plot, then we're much more likely to buy into something quickly. But if overtures are so great, why have they basically died out? Well, some smart cookies in the musical theater realized through experimentation that you could use the opening sequence of a musical, the section that's before the inciting incident, to prime the audience for more than just melodies. You could use lyric, dialogue, choreography, stage action, set, lights, music, costumes, all of this to create and introduce the world of the show right away. You don't have to wait for the overture to end and the curtain to rise. West Side Story was one of the first musicals to try out this concept to great success. The prologue does not rely on narration and dialogue, there are very few lines in the prologue, but instead on music, choreography, and stage action. Before a single line is sung in the actual opening number, the Jet song, we are introduced to the two rival gangs, to the choreography that's going to be the style of the show, to the dance fighting, to this version of New York City, and of course to the musical world, which is based on tritones and seconds. I mean, the opening whistle of the show even gives us a main motif. I'd personally consider this prologue to be kind of the more robust stepchild of the Runyon Land sequence from Guys and Dolls. That one is basically an overture during which some stage action happens to set up that version of New York City. West Side Story's prologue seems a little bit more driven in trying to introduce to the audience little tastes of what's about to happen, but that's just my personal opinion. What do you guys think? By the way, if you enjoy these kinds of discussions and debates, come join us in the Musical Theater Writing Collective community. We love having these nerdy analysis kinds of conversations. Now, we could do a similar type of introduction of world of music, again without fully diving into the beginning of the story, in a slightly different kind of prologue. This one involves lyrics and could be categorized as the people who are putting on the show are now going to tell us about the show we're going to watch, kind of thing. It's usually an ensemble sort of prologue, but sometimes it's a smaller group. My mind immediately goes to the opening of Sweeney Todd with that first line of, "Attend the tale of Sweeney Todd." You know, just telling us to listen and pay attention to this story about this weird guy that we're gonna watch for 3 hours. But maybe your mind went to Pippin, with the leading player singing, "Join us," literally inviting us in. Pretty robust category of prologue. This happens a lot. But sometimes prologues focus a little more on characters, trying to clear up any potential confusion early on. My mind immediately goes to Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. That prologue is a delightful and repetitious breakdown of all the main characters in the show and all of their main attributes. Sonia is good, Natasha is young, and Andre isn't here. Such a good show. That prologue also tells us directly, hey, there are a lot of characters here and they all have a lot of names and things could get confusing really fast, but don't get confused because you can look it all up in your program. We appreciate it, thanks a lot. Da-da-da, da-da-da. Is it subtle? No. Is it effective? You betcha. But what if there's a narrator involved? You know, someone to not only tell us who we are talking to, but when and where we are and how the beginning of the story is all going to come together and intertwine. The Broadway version of Mary Poppins does this very well, with Bert coming on stage and singing the whimsical Chim Chim Cheree music. He gives us a sense of the magic outside in the London air versus the chaotic wants and clashing desires inside the Banks house. Though I'm sure your brains all more immediately went to Into the Woods, the more classic narration example. We of course open with Once Upon a Time, ba-da-ba-ba-ba. And then that narration is threaded in directly to character introductions, exposition, plot introductions, and of course, motif introductions. This one is a little bit of an outlier though, because it is a 9-part prologue that lasts over 10 minutes and is very complex because of how all the stories interweave. But again, it's super effective. Speaking of exposition, what if your show requires a ton of background information that has to be known for the audience to understand what's about to happen? You know, like a Lord of the Rings style, "It all began with the forging of the great rings." What then? Yep, prologue. We could look at one of my absolute favorite prologues for this one, Beauty and the Beast. Not only do we get that voiceover narration, "Once upon a time, in a faraway land," giving us that whole backstory with the prince who becomes the beast, but we also get a brilliant musical introduction. It's the first time that we get to hear the epic motif. Da, 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 da. It kind of gives that sense of mystery and magic and fantasy and danger and the stakes. It's a good one. But perhaps you need a little more time, let's say half an hour-ish, and you need to do an entire miniature little musical play to set up everything that the audience needs to know, because you want to make sure that the audience knows that the main character who did a bad thing did that bad thing for a reason, and it was a good reason. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Les Mis. For my part, I used a mixture of a couple of these techniques to create the prologue for the musical The King's Legacy, which ultimately ended up being the missing puzzle piece for the opening of the show. Comment below if you'd like me to do a video breaking down that prologue and how it works in setting up everything for the show. No matter how you slice it, a prologue is a brilliant tool to introduce your audience to the world of your musical. But if you need to refresh on opening numbers before you decide for sure what your show needs, then you should watch this video next. Otherwise, thank you all for being here with me today, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers!